I thought I had moved on until I walked into my ex-husband's wedding and realized he had no idea I knew his biggest secret. That moment changed everything, right there in front of all their guests. My name is Madeline, and 3 years ago, my life shattered. It wasn't just that my marriage ended, it was how it ended. My husband, Jonathan, didn't just leave me, he left me for Isabella, a young woman from his office. They had begun seeing each other secretly, plotting the perfect escape from our 10-year marriage. I remembered the night he told me he wanted a divorce. "I'm not happy anymore," he said, calm, almost bored, as if 10 years of our life together meant nothing. I stared at him, numb. Shock, anger, and disbelief collided inside me. The man I had trusted, loved, and built a life with was gone, not just emotionally, but physically and mentally. Within months, Jonathan had moved in with Isabella. Social media was flooded with their photos, fine dining, exotic vacations, selfies laughing in cafes, and each post felt like a dagger through my heart. I tried to move on, to rebuild. I focused on my career, my small circle of friends, and my sanity. Slowly, the world began to feel normal again, until the invitation arrived. A cream-colored envelope lay on my doorstep. The elegant script caught my eye. "Jonathan Carter and Isabella Lawson request the pleasure of your presence at their wedding." For a moment, I froze. I couldn't breathe. Why on earth would they invite me? Was it a mockery, a taunt, or a mistake? I held the envelope in my hand, my mind spinning with memories of laughter, fights, late-night conversations, and promises broken. After hours of deliberation, I made a decision. I would go. Not for Jonathan, not for Isabella, but for myself, to see the truth unfold firsthand. The wedding was in a sprawling countryside resort. White flowers, crystal chandeliers, and manicured gardens painted a picture of luxury. Guests milled around, sipping champagne and laughing. Everything screamed perfection. I entered quietly, feeling eyes on me. Some recognized me immediately, a few whispered, some pretended not to notice, and then I saw them, Jonathan and Isabella, standing beneath a floral arch, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Jonathan's eyes met mine. For a fleeting second, the confident mask faltered. Then it returned. He walked toward me, extending his hand with a polite, rehearsed smile. "Madeline, I didn't expect you to actually come," he said. I smiled faintly. "You invited me." Isabella's eyes narrowed slightly, curiosity mixing with unease. The ceremony had ended, but the reception had just begun. Guests gathered around the tables, toasts being prepared, and music playing softly in the background. Everything seemed perfect, until Mr. Thompson stood up. He was an elderly man, perhaps in his early 60s, dressed sharply in a navy suit. His piercing eyes scanned the room with a calm authority. When he raised the microphone, silence fell instantly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've known Jonathan for decades, and tonight I need to say something that cannot wait." I felt a shiver down my spine. Everyone's attention turned to him. Jonathan's confident smile wavered. Isabella's posture stiffened. Mr. Thompson continued, slowly revealing a series of facts: mismanaged accounts, secret investments, and properties transferred without disclosure. The room was stunned. Guests whispered, some gasped. Jonathan looked pale, helpless. Isabella's facade cracked. "Madeline," Mr. Thompson said, "you have uncovered what others could not see. The truth belongs to you, and tonight it will be clear to all." I stepped forward calmly, my eyes locked on Jonathan. "I know everything," I said, "every secret you thought was hidden." The room erupted in gasps. Whispers of shock spread like wildfire. Jonathan could only stare. Isabella tried to maintain her composure, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her fear. And in that moment, I realized the power had shifted. The woman who had been humiliated, who had been betrayed, was now the one holding control. The room was still buzzing from Mr. Thompson's words. Jonathan's confident demeanor had completely disappeared, replaced by a pale, uncertain expression. Isabella tried to force a smile, but it trembled and fell short. Every guest could sense the tension. Something huge was about to unfold. I, Madeline, stood there, holding my champagne glass a little too tightly. My heart raced, not from fear, but from anticipation. I had spent months wondering what secrets Jonathan had kept hidden. Tonight, those secrets were being dragged into the light. After a brief pause, Mr. Thompson continued. Jonathan, for years you've hidden transactions, moved assets, and deceived those closest to you. Tonight, it's all coming out, and those affected will finally have their say. I felt a surge of power. Every insult, every betrayal, every sleepless night I had endured, the pain and anger of the past 3 years was converging in this moment. Jonathan tried to speak, but the words faltered in his throat. "Madeline, you don't understand," he began. I interrupted, softly but firmly. "I understand more than you think, Jonathan. Every bank account, every property, every lie you ever told me, I know." Gasps ran through the crowd. Whispers escalated. A few guests exchanged shocked glances. My ex-husband, the man who had walked away with my trust and my heart, was now exposed. The revelation didn't end there. Mr. Thompson revealed a folder full of documents he had collected, financial statements, emails, and letters that clearly showed Jonathan's manipulations. Isabella looked at the papers in horror. "This can't be. How did she find out?" Isabella whispered under her breath. I calmly replied, loud enough for some guests to hear, "I didn't find out by accident. I spent months gathering proof. Every secret you tried to hide, I uncovered." The room grew quiet again. Jonathan's face turned red, not from anger, but from shame. "Madeline, please, we can explain," he stammered. "Explain?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You left me for her, for Isabella, thinking you could hide everything, and now everyone sees who you really are." Some guests who had previously admired Jonathan were visibly shocked. They had thought he was a successful, honest man. Now his reputation lay in ruins. Isabella clung to him, trying to comfort him, but it was clear she had underestimated the impact of the truth. I felt a strange sense of calm. I had expected anger, sadness, maybe even tears, but what I felt was empowerment. For the first time in years, I was in control. "Jonathan, Isabella," I said, "I'm not here to yell. I'm here to make sure the truth is known, and I promise this ends tonight." Over the next hour, more details surfaced. Hidden investments Jonathan had tried to claim as his own, properties secretly signed over without Madeline's knowledge, and even contracts Isabella had unknowingly agreed to. Mr. Thompson guided the crowd through the evidence, ensuring that everyone understood the extent of Jonathan's deceit. Every revelation chipped away at their confidence. By the time the reception reached its midpoint, Jonathan's smug arrogance had been completely replaced with nervous tension. Isabella's cheerful composure had dissolved into panic. I could see the realization in their eyes. The world they had tried to control was no longer theirs. Later, in a private moment away from the crowd, Jonathan tried one last time to justify himself. "Madeline, I did all this to protect us. I thought it was best." I cut him off. "Protect us? You call lying, stealing, and betraying protection? You thought I wouldn't find out? That I'd let you walk away with my life?" He had no answer. Nothing could erase the evidence in front of everyone. By the end of the evening, it was clear. The tables had turned. Jonathan and Isabella were humiliated in front of everyone, while I walked away, calm, composed, and victorious. The air in the room felt heavy. What was supposed to be a perfect wedding had turned into something no one could have predicted. The whispers hadn't stopped. The smiles were gone. Every guest was watching, waiting, judging. And at the center of it all stood Madeline, calm, composed, powerful. Jonathan tried to regain control. He straightened his suit, forcing a weak smile as he looked around the room. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice slightly shaking. "These are misunderstandings, old matters being twisted." "Stop." Madeline's voice cut through the room like silence before a storm. Everyone turned toward her. She stepped forward slowly, her heels echoing against the marble floor. There was no anger in her face now, only certainty. "You've lied long enough, Jonathan." Isabella grabbed Jonathan's arm tightly. "Tell them it's not true," she whispered desperately. But Jonathan didn't answer, because for the first time, he had nothing left to say. Mr. Thompson stepped forward again, placing one final document on the table in front of the guests. "This," he said calmly, "is the final record, signed, verified, and impossible to deny." The closest guests leaned in. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Jonathan's name, hidden transfers, illegal asset shifts, properties tied to Madeline, taken without her full knowledge. Everything was there. Madeline took a deep breath. For years, she had imagined this moment differently. She thought she would feel rage, satisfaction, revenge. But standing there now, she felt something else. Closure. She looked directly at Isabella. "You thought you won," Madeline said quietly. "You thought taking him meant you had everything." Isabella's eyes filled with panic. "I didn't know," she whispered desperately. Madeline nodded slightly. "That's the thing about lies. They don't just destroy one person. They destroy everyone around them." Jonathan finally spoke, his voice low and broken. "Madeline, please, we can fix this. I'll make it right." Madeline gave a faint, almost sad smile. "No, you had years to make it right." She paused, then added, "Now it's my turn." The lawyer, who had been quietly present among the guests, stepped forward. Papers were presented, legal confirmations, ownership claims, account recoveries. Everything Jonathan thought he had secured was slipping through his fingers, right there in front of everyone. The guests were no longer whispering. They were watching in silence, witnessing the fall of a man who once seemed untouchable. Isabella slowly let go of Jonathan's arm. Her expression had changed. The confidence was gone. The excitement of the wedding, gone. All that remained was realization. "You lied to me too," she said softly. Jonathan turned toward her, desperate. "Isabella, please!" But she stepped back. For the first time, she saw him clearly. Not the charming, confident man she fell for, but the man who built everything on lies. Madeline watched it all quietly. There was no need for shouting, no need for revenge. The truth had already done everything. She turned toward the exit. For a moment, the room felt frozen, as if no one dared to move while she walked away. Each step felt lighter, each breath freer. Before leaving, she paused. Without turning back, she said one last thing. "The worst kind of betrayal isn't losing someone. It's realizing they were never who you thought they were." And then she walked out.
Outside, the sunlight felt different, warmer, brighter, like the world had been waiting for her to finally let go. Behind her, the wedding had collapsed into chaos, guests leaving early, whispers turning into judgment, a celebration turned into a cautionary tale. Jonathan stood alone in the middle of it all, and for the first time in his life, he had lost control. As for Madeline, she didn't look back, because her story was no longer about betrayal. It was about strength, truth, and starting over.